Good afternoon, Western Washington, and happy Wednesday. I'm Matthew Fab with Western Washington Weather, and today we're going to take a look at the Bear Gulch fire, which went absolutely crazy yesterday. In addition to that, we're going to take a look at the forecast for the next few days and the system coming in this weekend, which is going to bring a nice round of rain to the area. So starting with the satellite image right now, you can see we have this dying remnant of a front here off the coast. You can see those clouds diminishing as they just kind of move into the area. We may not even get very many clouds, if any, into the parts of the Puget Sound area as we go through the rest of the day today. And then obviously there you can see the Bear Gulch fire. You can see that large smoke plume that stretches from the fire in Mason and Jefferson counties north through the parts of the North Olympic Peninsula, San Juan's, up toward the lower mainland of British Columbia. There was ash reported falling in Squim, 37 miles north of the fire, and even all the way up here in Gibsons, British Columbia, this morning, 127 miles north of the fire, there was ash falling, which is just crazy to think about. And that is because of how insane the fire went yesterday, burning up a massive valley, the valley of the North Fork of the Skokomish River. And before we get to that, let's take a look at a couple other things that happened yesterday. Multiple temperature records were set. We had a very, very hot September day. You can see highs in the upper 80s to mid 90s for most of the Puget Sound area yesterday, including 91 at SeaTac Airport there. Going across the rest of the area, you can see 86 degrees at Naval Air Station Whidbey, which is really unusual with that offshore flow. You can see that offshore flow was not as strong over parts of the inland waters there, but then you can see 84 in Bellingham, 85 up in Linden, so pretty warm up there as well. And then take a look at parts of southwest Washington, 89 in Olympia, in the low 90s down the I-5 corridor, and then take a look at that 88 degrees on the Long Beach Peninsula, 90 degrees in Astoria, 87 degrees in Westport, and 85 in Ocean Shores. When you get the offshore winds, the coast can really, really heat up, even if it doesn't last for very long during the day and the temperature drops rapidly sometime during the day. You can still get some really extreme temperatures on the Washington and North Oregon coasts there when you have this offshore flow. Now taking a look at those wind gusts that cause that offshore flow, you can see the peak gusts there, 45 miles per hour in North Bend, 40, 45 there in that valley there along I-90. And then in Enumclaw, you can see 35 to 40 miles per hour, 56 miles per hour on one of the ridges there. And then you can see that the strongest gust in the area, of course, at the Vista House in the Columbia River Gorge, 64 miles per hour. You can see gusts near Troutdale, Oregon there, getting up to 35 to 45 miles per hour. And then out to PDX there, 31 miles per hour with the offshore flow. So it was a decent, brief gap wind event for September, but nothing too significant in terms of what we've seen in terms of gap winds before. Now taking a look again at the pyrocumulus cloud that the Bear Gulch fire released yesterday. This is a time lapse that Stu here posted from Everett, and I wanted to take a look at this. Just look at how huge that pyrocumulus cloud is, and you can see as we went through the evening, it just put up another big tower there as we got towards sunset and just started drifting north. And you can see as it got darker and darker that you just had this plume continuing across the area. And what did that look like here? Well, this is the satellite imagery, and you can see that huge plume, that shadow it cast all the way out towards Seattle. And this was just extraordinary to see on the Olympic Peninsula. This would be a large fire plume for anywhere in Washington state. Of course, not as big as the massive plumes we had off the Wildcat fire and the Sugarloaf fire back in early September, but this is extraordinary for the Olympic Peninsula. And you can see there that very thick smoke moving north, how you had that ash that fell in places like Squim and then all the way up into British Columbia as well. So taking a look at the watch duty map, and you can see there, look at this huge heat signature, just massive, that shows where the Bear Gulch fire burned. They're up the North Fork of the Skokomish River there, up this huge valley. You can see the red areas here is where it's been mapped already, and then these orange areas are the heat signatures. You can see it's starting to burn up this canyon here as well, and then you have this other canyon on the south side. Updated this morning at 15,739 acres, but none of this has been mapped yet, which is likely at least another 5,000 acres, probably 10,000 acres or more that has not yet been mapped that burned yesterday. And this is just extraordinary. It burned into the next county, that's into Jefferson County now. And this is likely, after seeing this and how much burned yesterday, I would say that with a lot of certainty that this is definitely the biggest fire on the Olympic Peninsula, and we know it's the biggest in the last 50 years, but probably the biggest in the last century. I would be shocked if we've had anything this big in previous centuries in the Olympic Peninsula there. This is just such a wet area. It's very, very hard for fires to grow and be this big, and part of the reason that this happened is because there are trees in here that have not been burned in centuries or longer even, and so there's just so much fuel, and it's just really crazy to see something like this going on. So we'll take a look at the forecast for the fire in just a moment, but let's take a look at the overall pattern. You can see we have this ridging that is starting to slowly weaken and move out of the area. By the time we go into Friday there, you can see going into Friday night, then the ridging starts to push east into Saturday, and then you have the system moving in Sunday, and we'll take a look at how that will bring a nice round of rain to the area. But then as we go into next week, we get another ridge building back into the area very quickly by Monday and Tuesday there, and you can see we do have this upper level low over the California coast that may try to bring some thunderstorm activity up here midweek, but I don't think that is looking too confident at this time. We'll have to wait and see. But overall, more ridging coming up after that brief system over the weekend. And you can see that system over the weekend here. There's that dying front right there off the Washington coast, and then we remain dry all the way through Thursday and Friday. Then you see the system starting to move down toward the area here on Saturday, starting to impact the area on Sunday morning, continues through the day Sunday into Sunday afternoon and evening when you have a potential convergence zone. That weakens by Sunday night, and then we remain dry after that into next week. And taking a look at how much rain we could expect here, you can see about a ½ inch for most of western Washington, up to an inch on the coast and in parts of the Olympic Mountains. So that is really nice to see. We'll continue watching this, of course, over the next few days, but you're looking at a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch for most of the Puget Sound metro area, and then up to an inch on the coast, maybe up toward an inch and a half for the western slopes of the Olympics. Bear Gulch fire not getting too much there, but about 3/4 of an inch, which will be good to bring down that fire activity. So this is really good news that we're going to get a nice round of rain here. Unfortunately, this will kind of be all we get for a while, so we'll have to keep watching to see what happens after that. Now let's take a look at the smoke. So you can see this is the high-resolution rapid refresh model, vertically integrated smoke. This is that smoke aloft, those big smoke plumes that you can see on the satellite image and that sometimes you can see across the Puget Sound area. So looking at the Bear Gulch fire here as we go into this afternoon, you can see it just has another massive plume of smoke. And you see that directed up towards Squim and Dungeness Spit, and then over the San Juans and right up toward Boundary Bay and some of the eastern parts of the lower mainland of British Columbia. And you can see as we go to about 6 to 7 p.m. tonight, look at how massive that smoke plume is. Some of that being directed over parts of Whatcom County as well, maybe even scraping Island County a bit there. Then you can see some big smoke plumes blowing off to the northeast there off the Labor Mountain fire and the Sugarloaf fire in the Cascades, and a smaller plume off the Wildcat fire. As we go into tonight, that smoke aloft will start to be pushed. It'll be pushed east, and then south. So it'll be kind of interesting to see this little dance it does here. By sunrise there on Thursday, we'll have a lot of smoke aloft across parts of western Washington, but that should clear out somewhat quickly as we go into Thursday afternoon, and that Bear Gulch fire smoke starts to push south, and then all the smoke it produced the day before is going to be dragged back south across the area, which is kind of interesting. So you can see all this smoke over Vancouver that's moving back across western Washington going into Thursday evening is the smoke from the Bear Gulch fire from today. So and then you can see the Sugarloaf fire blowing off to the northeast there as well. You kind of have a little bit of a dance going on in terms of some of the flow. But look at that, another big smoke plume possibly off the Bear Gulch fire going into Thursday evening. And then you can see smoke aloft across western Washington. That heavy smoke aloft being directed south toward some rural areas of Pacific and Grays Harbor counties, and then out across the northern Oregon coast and even out toward the Long Beach Peninsula and stuff like that as well. And then some of that smoke may start to push through the area and then back north. We'll see as we start to flip that flow around with that system coming in. Now taking a look at the surface smoke, you can see as we go through the day today that surface smoke is really relegated to the Olympic Mountains and the Hood Canal area. As we go into tonight, that's where it stays. But as we go into tomorrow and that smoke starts to come from the north, you can see we get some surface smoke in the foothills. We get some of that surface smoke around Vancouver and parts of the Willamette Valley. And then as we go into the evening, some heavy surface smoke likely for Shelton and Olympia going into Thursday evening and the rest of the Hood Canal area. And then as we go into Friday morning, you can see a decent amount of western Washington around these fires, and then down toward parts of western Oregon will be experiencing some surface smoke there. The metro area doesn't look to be too impacted by it, though, which is good to see. So we'll have to watch this, though, closely to see if that changes or if that trends any differently given fire activity over the next couple days. And then taking a look at the air quality. Once we have this load here, you'll be able to see we're not doing that bad because so much of the smoke was elevated off the Bear Gulch fire that it's not producing some of the really bad numbers we saw in the northern Olympic Peninsula last night. You can see the Puget Sound area generally in the good category, a few areas in the moderate category, and then eastern Washington, some of the areas downwind of the Sugarloaf fire at the surface there, including Wenatchee, having some pretty unhealthy air quality today. Otherwise, light surface smoke across eastern Washington, bringing moderate air quality. And then just wanted to point this out as well. This is the NAM model. Taking a look at 24-hour temperature change, you can see today is likely going to be 20 to 30 degrees cooler across all of western Washington, following the flow switching back onshore today versus yesterday's offshore flow. So just a massive temperature difference today versus yesterday's 90-degree day. We're going to have highs only in the 70s for some places, or for most of the area actually in the 70s today. And you can see that there on the 24-hour temperature change, up to 30 degrees cooler for some places, which is just extraordinary and very interesting to see, just that huge one-day contrast. And taking a look at that there on the high temperatures, you can see Seattle northward highs in the low to mid 70s, Seattle southward in the mid to upper 70s, maybe 80 in Portland, and then mid 60s on the coast. A little bit cooler on Thursday, a little bit warmer back to about today's levels on Friday. Their highs in the low 70s, low to mid 70s Seattle north, mid to upper 70s Seattle south, mid 60s on the coast. And then we cool down a little bit as we go into Sunday, with highs dropping to the upper 60s across the region, low 70s from Seattle southward, and then you can see the coast in the mid 60s as well. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week remaining in the upper 60s to low 70s across western Washington. So generally a seasonable pattern now that this offshore flow has moved out of the area and we don't have those super scorching temperatures for September here anymore. Also wanted to point out, Western Washington Weather merch store. We do have some hoodies and sweatshirts as well. Go and check those out. Links in the description below to all of the products on the store. And thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the Western Washington Weather YouTube channel. Follow me on the Western Washington Weather Facebook group and my Twitter and Blue Sky accounts. Posting a lot of updates there, especially about the Bear Gulch fire and anything else going on. So be sure to check those out. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.